She walked up to the end of my driveway and told me to move my truck. Not asked, told. I was 11 days into a permitted drainage project on my own 4 acres. Orange cones at both ends, permit flags in the ground. Caldwell Road clear in both directions. I told her the truck wasn't blocking anything. She said it was affecting the aesthetics of the community entrance. I asked her which document gave her authority over my driveway. She cited the HOA covenant. I told her my deed was recorded in March 2013. Her covenant didn't exist until November 2017. She told me to move the truck anyway. I pulled my glove back on, climbed into the trench, and went back to work. At 9:02 a.m., she called 911. At 9:09 a.m., my phone rang. Hale County Sheriff's Office. The deputy on the other end said, "Chief, I think the complaint might be your property, sir. Let's begin this journey from the start. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe." The property had been Ray Dunbar's for 11 years before Donna Marsh ever moved into the neighborhood next door. He had bought it in March of 2013, 4 acres on Caldwell Road in Hale County, a corner lot at the southwestern edge of what was then a logged-over timber parcel, with no roads through it, no utilities stubbed to the boundary, no signs of anything coming. The timber company had cleared it in 2009 and left the land to recover. By the time Ray walked it with the seller's agent, the slash piles had rotted down to knee height, and young sweet gum and tulip poplar were coming back in the gaps between the residual hardwoods on the ridge. He had stood at the back of the lot in the February cold before closing, a site visit he had insisted on before signing, and looked at the ridge line and the creek drainage at the northeast corner and the open sky above the cleared zone, and made the decision he had been building toward for 20 years of law enforcement. He was going to own this land, and he was going to build on it, and when he was done working, he was going to come home to it. He closed on March 14th, 2013. The deed was recorded in Hale County Deed Book 44, page 12, the following morning. The legal description covered 4.17 acres. The parcel number was 04-2013-0017. Ray was 55 years old. The driveway went in during the summer of 2014. He had designed it himself. 220 feet of gravel drive beginning at the Caldwell Road shoulder and running east across the front of the property, before angling southeast toward the site where the garage would go. The angle was intentional. He had wanted the drive to follow the natural grade rather than fight it, to let drainage move away from the surface rather than pool against the gravel edge. He had spent enough years responding to flooded driveways and washed-out culverts in this county to know what a poorly graded drive looked like in year 3. He pulled the county driveway access permit in April of 2014. The county engineer's office reviewed the grade plan, the culvert sizing at the Caldwell Road connection, the drainage direction. They approved it in 11 days. He had the culvert installed by a contractor and the gravel base laid by the same crew. The surface course he had finished himself over a long weekend in June. A 16-ton load of crusher run spread and compacted by hand. The roller borrowed from a neighbor 2 properties north. His back had reminded him about that weekend for the better part of a month. The permit was closed in July 2014. The driveway connection was recorded with the county engineer's office. It was his driveway, built on his land, permitted in his name, inspected and recorded. Every piece of paper that existed on the subject said so. The garage went up in 2015, 2016, and 2017. 3 summers of weekend work. A concrete slab he poured himself with 4 other men. A steel frame building kit he had ordered from a supplier in Tennessee. The exterior steel panels going on in the fall of his 3rd summer. By the time the Pinecrest Ridge developer was platting 180 residential lots on the timber parcel to the east, Ray had a 4-acre property with a permitted driveway, a completed detached garage, and county permits for both, all recorded before a single subdivision lot was staked. The Pinecrest Ridge HOA covenants were recorded in November 2017. Ray read them the week they went into the county index. He found the applicability clause on page 3. He read it twice. The covenant applied to all parcels within the Pinecrest Ridge recorded plat boundary. His parcel number appeared nowhere in the document. His deed book and page appeared nowhere in the document. He was not in the plat. He had never been in the plat. He put the covenants in his property file and did not think about them again for 4 years. Ray Dunbar had entered law enforcement at 22, a deputy's position with the Hale County Sheriff's Office in the spring of 1981, the year the department ran 14 sworn officers and covered the county out of a converted feed store on the county seat's main road. He had spent his first 8 years in patrol, running calls across the county's unincorporated roads and agricultural parcels, and the small communities that were not incorporated towns, and had no police department of their own. He had made sergeant in 1989, lieutenant in 1994, captain in 2001. He had been appointed chief. The department used that title for its top administrative officer in 2012, the year before he bought the Caldwell Road property. He had served in that role for 11 years. The department under his tenure had grown from 34 sworn officers to 61. He had overseen the construction of the current department headquarters, the implementation of the county's first body camera program, and the negotiation of 3 consecutive labor contracts with the Deputies Association. He had run the department with the same methodology he had used since he made sergeant. Know the statute, know the boundary, know exactly what the paper says, and do not step 1 inch past it. He had retired in August of this year. No ceremony. He had declined. No interview with the county paper. His retirement was a private matter. He had notified the county commission, the department's command staff, and the union president. He had cleared his desk on a Friday, shaken hands with the officers present that day, driven home to Caldwell Road, and started planning the French drain installation he had been deferring for 2 years. The agency he had run for 11 years had primary jurisdiction over every unincorporated parcel in Hale County. The Pinecrest Ridge subdivision was unincorporated, all 180 lots. The common areas, the clubhouse, the entrance road. Every square foot of it fell under the jurisdiction of the Hale County Sheriff's Office, the department whose patch Ray Dunbar had worn for 34 years and whose command structure he had led for the last 11. He was aware that Donna Marsh did not know this. He had no particular reason to tell her. The Tuesday morning in question was the second week of October. Ray had been up since 5:45 a.m., the habit of 34 years not releasing its hold on his schedule simply because a desk had been cleared and a retirement form had been filed. He had coffee on the porch in the early dark, watched the sky lighten over the ridge to the east, and reviewed the drainage plan he had taped to the garage wall the previous evening. The French drain installation was a project he had been planning since the spring, a subsurface drain running along the south side of the driveway for 140 feet, designed to intercept the lateral groundwater that was moving across the clay layer toward the drive's base course and softening the gravel edge through the wet months. He had pulled the permit through the county engineer's office 17 days earlier, same process he had used in 2014. The permit number was on file. The drainage plan had been reviewed and approved. The permit flags, small orange markers on wire stakes, were positioned at the trench head and termination point, visible from the road. He had rented an equipment trailer and loaded the pipe, the filter fabric, and the aggregate the previous afternoon. The trailer was hitched to his pickup, a full-size work truck, the truck he used for anything that required a truck, which on a 4-acre rural property was a regular category of task. At 7:40 a.m., he pulled the truck and trailer lengthwise across the upper section of the driveway, positioning it to give himself material access to the south edge of the drive without having to carry aggregate 60 feet by hand. He set orange cones at each end of the truck, 4 cones, the reflective kind, spaced clearly. He had a shovel in the ground by 8 a.m. The truck was on his driveway. His driveway was on his 4 acres. His 4 acres were not in the Pinecrest Ridge plat. The truck was 60 feet west of the nearest point of the subdivision boundary. It was not on an easement strip. It was not blocking Caldwell Road. It was not blocking any road. It was parked on private property, by the property's owner, for permitted drainage work, with visible safety markers at each end. From certain angles, specifically from the Pinecrest Ridge main entrance road, looking west through the gap between 2 subdivision lots at the corner, the truck and trailer were visible. The equipment trailer's side panel was visible above the fence line for approximately 40 feet of sight distance. The truck cab was visible from one specific point on the entrance road where the angle aligned. Donna Marsh drove that entrance road every morning. Pinecrest Ridge Homeowners Association had been operating for 7 years. The developer had seeded it, as developers did, with initial covenant documents and an elected board structure, turned it over to the residents when 75% of lots were sold, and left the community to govern itself. The HOA collected dues, maintained the common areas, enforced the covenants, and resolved the categories of neighbor disputes that arose in any 180-home community over time: fence heights, lawn conditions, exterior paint colors, vehicles parked on the street past the covenant's 72-hour limit. Donna Marsh had moved into Lot 114 on Ridgeline Drive 4 years ago. She had been on the board within 6 months of moving in, the kind of person who arrives in an organization and immediately identifies the places where she believes things could be managed better. She had run for president on a platform of community standards and property values, and won by a margin that suggested she had campaigned seriously. She was now in her second term. Ray did not know Donna Marsh. He had seen her car on Caldwell Road twice before, once in August, when she had knocked on his door to ask about the orange cones he had placed at the trench head the previous week, and he had shown her the permit, and she had left without pressing it further, and once in September, when he had seen her slow on Caldwell Road and look at his property from her car window and then continue on. He had noted both events without particular concern. He had dealt with HOA boards in a professional capacity for 3 decades. He understood the category. What Donna Marsh did not know, what she had no reason to know and had not asked, was that the man working in the drainage trench in the October morning light had run the Hale County Sheriff's Office for 11 years. That when her call to dispatch went through at 9:02 a.m., it went to the department Ray Dunbar had built. That the deputy assigned to the call had worked under Ray's command for 7 years. That the lieutenant supervising that shift had worked under Ray for 6 of her 9 years in the department and knew his voice by the sound of his truck pulling into the lot. She had seen a truck in a driveway that was visible from her entrance road. That had been enough. Ray was in the trench at 8:47 a.m., measuring depth to clay, when he heard a car stop on the shoulder. He finished the measurement first. Ray heard the car before he saw it. He was at the 40-foot mark of the trench line, knee-deep in the cut, the clay layer visible at the bottom of the sidewall, where the soil changed color from the dark topsoil above to the gray-brown impermeable layer that was routing the groundwater toward his driveway base. He had his measuring rod in the ground and his field log open on the flat of the trench edge, the notebook held open with a chunk of gravel against the light October wind. Depth to clay, 14 inches. He wrote the number, wrote the station mark, capped the pen. He heard the car slow on Caldwell Road. He heard it stop on the gravel shoulder rather than continue. He did not look up immediately. He set the measuring rod against the trench side wall, noted the station in the log, and finished the entry before he straightened and turned. Donna Marsh was standing at the end of his driveway. She was wearing the Pinecrest Ridge HOA polo shirt, navy blue, the embroidered association logo on the left chest, the kind of shirt that announced organizational authority before a word was spoken. She had a clipboard in her left hand, and her right hand on her hip, and she was standing at the point where his driveway met the Caldwell Road right-of-way. She had not stepped past that line. She was standing at the edge of his property with the posture of someone who considers that boundary a courtesy rather than a limit. Ray pulled himself out of the trench. He set the field log on the truck's tailgate, pulled his work gloves off, and walked toward her. He covered the distance without hurrying. He had not hurried toward a complaint in 34 years. She began before he reached her. The truck, she told him, was blocking road access. It needed to be moved. She said it in the declarative, not a question, not a request, a directive issued with the confidence of someone who had issued directives in this neighborhood for 2 years and had generally seen them followed. Ray stopped at a conversational distance. He told her the truck was not blocking road access. He told her it was on a private driveway on private property, and that Caldwell Road was fully passable in both directions, which it was, the road shoulder clear, the travel lane unobstructed, nothing within 15 feet of the road edge except his orange cones on his own gravel. She told him the vehicle was a visual obstruction. She told him it was affecting the aesthetics of the community entrance. She said the word community with a particular weight, as though it extended in all directions from the Pinecrest Ridge sign until it encountered something worth stopping at. Ray asked her which document gave her authority over his driveway. She told him the Pinecrest Ridge HOA Community Standards Covenant. He told her his deed on this property was recorded in March of 2013. He asked her when the Pinecrest Ridge Covenant was recorded. She did not answer that question directly. She told him that was not how property authority worked. She told him the covenant covered the community, and the community included the area visible from the community entrance. Ray looked at her for a moment without speaking. He had interviewed people in formal settings for 3 decades. Suspects, witnesses, complainants, officers under review. He had developed a particular kind of patience for the moment when someone states a legal position they have not actually examined. He told her the covenant covers parcels within the recorded plat boundary. He told her his parcel is not in the recorded plat. He told her she is welcome to pull Deed Book 44, page 12, from the county index and read the legal description, and then pull the Pinecrest Ridge plat and find his parcel number in the applicability clause, and that she would not find it because it is not there. She told him the truck needed to move. He told her it did not. She stepped forward, not onto the property, she stopped at the line, but forward, her chin coming up, the clipboard pressing against her side. "Move your truck! Now!" Ray looked at her. He looked at the truck. He looked back at her. "It's my driveway." He turned, pulled his gloves back on, climbed into the trench, and picked up the measuring rod. Donna Marsh stood at the end of the driveway for approximately 90 seconds after that. Ray was aware of her presence the way he had always been aware of things happening at the edge of his field of attention, without turning toward them, without giving them the confirmation of his focus. He heard her exhale. He heard the clipboard shift. He heard her shoes on the gravel shoulder as she walked back to her car. He heard the car door close. He heard her voice, low, clipped, the tone of someone dictating rather than conversing. He could not hear the words. He did not need to. He noted the time in his field log, 8:51 a.m. He wrote, HOA President on site. No authority established. Departed. He drew a line under the entry and went back to the trench wall measurement. Donna Marsh called Hale County Dispatch at 9:02 a.m. The call was recorded, as all calls to the dispatch center were recorded, on the department's logging system, a system Ray had overseen the upgrade of in 2019. The new platform storing 36 months of audio, with timestamp and caller ID attached to every entry. She reported a vehicle obstructing road access on Caldwell Road, near the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision entrance. She described the driver as uncooperative. She said the vehicle was creating a safety hazard, and that she had attempted to resolve the matter directly without success. She did not tell the dispatcher the vehicle was on a private driveway. She did not tell the dispatcher the driveway was permitted and the work was permitted, and the permit flags were visible on wire stakes at both ends of the work zone. She did not tell the dispatcher that the property owner had asked her to identify what legal authority she was acting under, and that she had not been able to do so. She did not tell the dispatcher she had been asked, politely and without ambiguity, to leave, and had left. She said, "Vehicle obstructing access, driver uncooperative, safety hazard, please send a unit." The dispatcher logged the call at 9:03 a.m. The call was a standard road obstruction complaint, the kind of call the department ran a dozen times a week across the county, the category that covered everything from farm equipment blocking a rural road to a broken-down vehicle on a highway shoulder. It was assigned a call number and routed to the nearest available unit in the Caldwell Road sector. The unit assigned was Deputy Carl Tatum's patrol vehicle. Carl Tatum had been with the Hale County Sheriff's Office for 7 years. He had come in as a new deputy in the year Ray made his final push for the headquarters building. Ray had been at the swearing-in ceremony for Carl's cohort, had shaken hands with each of them after the oath, had told them the same thing he told every incoming class. Know the statute, know the boundary, do the job exactly as far as the paper authorizes you to do it, and not one step further. Carl had been a good deputy, methodical, patient with complainants without being passive about actual violations. He had the disposition that held up in this kind of county work. The rural calls, the long response times, the situations that required judgment rather than procedure, because the procedure had not been written for what was actually in front of you. Ray had reviewed his performance evaluations 3 times over 7 years. Each time he had written the same margin note, sound officer. Carl's supervisor on the morning shift was Lieutenant Elise Barrow. Elise had been with the department for 9 years. She had come up through patrol, the same way Carl was coming up now. through the daily accumulation of calls and documentation and the gradual development of judgment. Ray had promoted her to lieutenant 2 years before his retirement. He had done it because she was the most technically precise officer in the department, at the rank below lieutenant, and because she had the specific kind of composure that command positions required. She did not raise her voice in situations that called for steadiness, and she did not lower her standards in situations that called for clarity. She had worked under Ray Dunbar for 6 of her 9 years in the department. She knew his voice. She knew his truck. She knew his Caldwell Road property because she had driven past it on shift and seen his truck in the driveway and the garage under construction, and had, once, stopped to ask if everything was all right because there had been a light on in the garage at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, and she was 2 properties north on a different call anyway. When Carl's call number came across the radio, and the address was Caldwell Road near the Pinecrest Ridge entrance, Elise was at her desk at the department. She looked at the address. She looked at the call description. She picked up her radio. She did not transmit. She set it down. She reached for her desk phone instead. Ray's phone rang at 9:09 a.m. He was at the 60-foot station mark on the trench line, the clay depth consistent with the earlier readings, the drainage gradient behaving as the plan had predicted. He had settled into the rhythm of the work, the measuring, the logging, the physical effort of the trench cut, and the phone's ring was an interruption he acknowledged without irritation. He set the rod, climbed to the driveway surface, pulled his right glove off, and looked at the screen. Hale County Sheriff's Office, non-emergency line. He had that number in his contacts under HCSO. He had dialed it from the other direction for 34 years, the institutional reflex so deep it would probably never fully leave. He answered. Ray Dunbar. Chief. A pause. Mr. Dunbar, this is Carl Tatum. I've got a complaint call on Caldwell Road, near the Pinecrest Ridge entrance. Road obstruction, uncooperative driver. I think it might be your property, sir. I'm about 4 minutes out. Just wanted to let you know I'm responding. Ray leaned against the truck's front fender. The October morning was cool and clear, the ridge to the east catching the mid-morning light, the sweet gum at the back of the property going yellow at the edges. He could hear Carl's unit in the background of the call, the road noise, the radio traffic, the particular acoustic signature of a county patrol vehicle running at road speed. He told Carl he appreciated the call. He told Carl to come on down. He ended the call and looked at the end of the driveway, where Donna Marsh had been standing 11 minutes earlier. He thought about the call she had made to dispatch. He thought about the description she had given: vehicle obstructing access, driver uncooperative, safety hazard. He thought about the difference between what she had described and what was actually present on this driveway on this October morning. He pulled his glove back on. He climbed back into the trench. He had 4 minutes. He would use them. The field log entry for 9:09 a.m. read, HCSO unit responding to complaint call, Deputy Carl Tatum, notified by officer prior to arrival. Permit documentation on truck tailgate. Below it he wrote the call time, the officer's name, and the estimated arrival. Then he added one more line. Not a required entry, not a standard field notation. Just a fact, documented in the same field notebook where he recorded drain depths and grade measurements and site conditions. Complaint description per officer. Road obstruction, uncooperative driver, actual conditions, permitted drainage work on private property, private driveway, no road obstruction, permit flags visible, discrepancy noted. He capped the pen. He set the log on the tailgate next to the drainage plan. He heard a patrol unit slow on Caldwell Road 4 minutes later, exactly when Carl had said. Carl Tatum pulled onto the Caldwell Road shoulder at 9:13 a.m. and parked behind Donna Marsh's car. Ray heard the unit arrive, the specific sound of a county patrol vehicle, the engine note he had heard from the other side of the radio for 3 decades, the crunch of the shoulder gravel under the tires as the unit came to a stop. He did not climb out of the trench immediately. He finished the measurement at the 60-foot station, logged it, and set the rod against the sidewall. Then he climbed out and stood beside the truck, his field log in one hand, and watched. Carl stepped out of the unit in full uniform. Campaign cover seated correctly, badge on the left chest catching the October light, the Hale County Sheriff's Office patch on the left shoulder, the department patch Ray had worn for 34 years, the same patch he had watched go onto the shoulders of 6 incoming deputy classes during his tenure as chief. The patch that meant something specific in this county to anyone who had reason to know what it meant. Carl was 31 years old and carried himself with the measured economy of a deputy who had learned early that how you moved in a situation told people as much as what you said. He walked to Donna Marsh first. Standard procedure. The complainant gets the initial contact. The officer establishes the nature of the call before approaching the subject of the complaint. Ray knew the procedure. He had written portions of the department's field contact protocol in 2016. He watched Carl introduce himself, watched Donna's posture shift slightly at the badge and the uniform, watched her begin to explain. Ray could not hear the conversation from where he stood. He did not need to. He had watched 1,000 field contacts from both sides over 34 years. He could read the body language from 60 feet. The complainant presenting her case, the officer listening without confirming, the notebook coming out, the pen moving. Carl was doing exactly what a sound deputy did in the first 3 minutes of an ambiguous call, collecting the complaint without validating it, asking the clarifying questions, building the factual record before drawing any conclusion. He watched Carl write. He watched Donna gesture toward the truck, toward the driveway, toward the Pinecrest Ridge entrance road, visible 80 feet east. He watched Carl nod twice without his pen stopping. He watched Carl look at the orange cones, look at the permit flags at the trench head, look at Caldwell Road in both directions, the road fully passable, not a vehicle within sight in either direction. The travel lane as clear as it had been at 7 a.m. Carl closed his notebook. He said something to Donna that Ray could not hear. Then he turned and walked up the driveway. He covered the distance between Donna and Ray with the same unhurried pace Ray had seen in him since his first year in the department. When he was 10 feet out, he took off his campaign cover with his left hand and held it at his side. A small gesture, the kind that meant he was here as Carl Tatum rather than as a responding unit, that the formality of the contact was not the whole of what was happening here. He extended his right hand. Ray shook it. "Morning, Chief." He said it naturally, not loudly, not performing it, simply using the form of address that 7 years of working under this man had made automatic. It was the way the department addressed Ray Dunbar. It was the way they would probably always address him, the rank having adhered to the man in the way ranks did when a person had held them long enough and well enough. Ray said good morning. He asked how Carl was doing. Carl said he was doing fine, sir. And then he said he was sorry for the circumstances, and Ray told him there was nothing to be sorry about. The man had a call to run, and he should run it. 40 feet behind Carl, Donna Marsh had gone very still. Ray had brought the documents out of the house at 8:48 a.m., 1 minute after he heard her car stop on the shoulder, before she had said a word to him, before he had climbed out of the trench. He had gone inside through the side door, crossed to the filing cabinet in the hallway where he kept the active property documents, and pulled the folder he had labeled Caldwell Road, Drainage Project, in July when the planning began. Inside, the county drainage permit, issued September 24th, the permit number in the upper right corner matching the numbers printed on the orange flags at the trench head. The drainage plan the county engineer had reviewed and approved. His deed, Book 44, page 12, the legal description of parcel 04-2013-0017, the recording date of March 15th, 2013. He had carried the folder to the truck and set it on the tailgate under a chunk of gravel to keep the wind from taking it. He had known, somewhere in 34 years of reading people, that this was not going to stay a conversation. He handed the folder to Carl now. Carl opened it on the truck tailgate and went through it in order. The permit first, reading the permit number, the issue date, the legal description, the authorized work scope. He looked at the permit flags at the trench head. He looked back at the permit. He looked at the flags again. The permit number on the document and the permit number on the flags matched. The work described in the permit, subsurface drainage installation, south side of driveway, parcel 04-2013-0017, matched what was in front of him. An open trench, drainage pipe stacked on a pallet beside the truck, filter fabric roll leaning against the rear tire, a field log with dated entries going back to the previous week's prep work. Carl took out his body camera, a department issue unit mounted to his chest, the same model Ray had selected in the 2021 procurement, and photographed the permit, full page, then the permit number close-up, then the flags in the background. He turned to the deed and photographed it the same way, full page, legal description close-up, recording date close-up. He photographed the trench, the pipe, the permit flags, the truck's position on the driveway, Caldwell Road in both directions showing the unobstructed travel lane. He was building the record. Ray recognized the methodology because it was the methodology he had trained into this department. Document first, draw conclusions after. Carl replaced the documents in the folder and set it on the tailgate. He said, "Everything's in order, Chief. Permits current. Work matches the authorization. Vehicles on your property." He paused. "I don't have a violation here." Ray told him he did not expect him to find one. They both heard Donna Marsh's footsteps on the gravel before they saw her. She had crossed from the Caldwell Road shoulder onto the driveway, stepped past the property line she had been careful to stand at during the first confrontation, moved on to Ray's 4 acres with the urgency of someone who had been waiting 40 feet away for 3 minutes and had run out of patience for waiting. She was approaching Carl directly, her clipboard back in hand, her posture reconstructed into the authority she had arrived with. She asked Carl what was going to happen. Carl turned to face her fully. He put his campaign cover back on, a small shift in register. The formal contact resumed. He told her, in the measured tone of an officer delivering a finding, that the vehicle was on private property, that the drainage work was permitted through the county engineer's office, permit current and in order, that Caldwell Road was unobstructed in both directions, that he could not identify a violation of any statute or ordinance that would require the vehicle to be moved. Donna told him the truck was still creating a visual obstruction for the community. Carl told her the visual standard she was describing was a covenant standard. He told her the covenant applied to parcels within the Pinecrest Ridge recorded plat boundary. He looked at her without elaborating further, the way a deputy looked at a complainant when he was going to let the logic arrive on its own, rather than push it across. Donna looked at the truck. She looked at Ray. She looked back at Carl. She asked why he had called the property owner chief. Carl answered her the way a 7-year deputy answered a question he was not required to answer, but that had a factual response available. Directly, without embellishment, without drama. He told her that Ray Dunbar had served as chief of the Hale County Sheriff's Office for 11 years, that he had retired in August of this year. That chief was the title by which the department knew him, and it was the title Carl had used. The clipboard lowered, not placed down, not set on the truck or transferred to her other hand. It simply dropped, the arm holding it losing its tension, the board coming to rest at Donna's side. She looked at Ray with the expression of someone recalculating a situation that has just revealed a dimension she had not known existed. Ray watched her process it. He had watched people process unwelcome information for 34 years, across interview room tables, at the scene of property disputes, in the hallway outside courtrooms, where the paperwork had not said what someone needed it to say. There was a specific quality to the moment when a person understood that the ground they had been standing on was not the ground they had believed it to be. Donna Marsh was standing in that moment now. She asked, after a few seconds, whether that meant anything here, whether Ray, being the former chief of the Hale County Sheriff's Office, meant anything with respect to the situation on this driveway, on this October morning, with a unit responding to her complaint. Carl took a breath. He answered her carefully, the word carefully meaning what it always meant when a deputy chose it. Not softened, not evasive, but precise. Constructed so that what was said was accurate and what was implied was clear. He told her it meant that the agency with primary jurisdiction over the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision, every lot, the common areas, the entrance road, the full 180-lot footprint, was the Hale County Sheriff's Office, that any complaint call originating from Pinecrest Ridge would be routed to this department, that any enforcement action in Pinecrest Ridge would be carried out by this department, that the man who had run this department for 11 years lived on the 4-acre parcel at the corner of Caldwell Road that shared a boundary with the subdivision's western edge. He was not saying it as a threat. His tone carried no menace, no satisfaction, no implication of consequence. He was saying it because she had asked a direct question, and it had a direct answer. Donna said she had not been aware of that. Ray had been leaning against the truck's front fender with his arms crossed and his field log tucked under one arm. He looked at her when she said it. He told her, in the same even register he had used since she arrived on his driveway, that he had not thought she was. The three of them stood in the October morning for a moment. The trench open behind Ray, the permit flags at the trench head catching the light, the drainage pipe on the pallet, the equipment trailer sitting exactly where it had been sitting since 7:40 a.m. Caldwell Road was quiet. A vehicle passed east on the road without slowing. The Pinecrest Ridge entrance sign was visible 80 feet away, the brick columns and the landscaping, and the words, "A Covenant Community," in cast iron letters. Donna Marsh looked at the truck one more time. Then she looked at the subdivision entrance. Then she looked at Ray. Ray waited. She did not say anything else. She shifted her clipboard to her other hand. She looked at Carl, who was standing with the neutral patience of a deputy who had closed out the finding in his mind and was waiting for the contact to reach its natural end. Then she turned and walked back down the driveway toward her car. Carl watched her go. He looked at Ray. He said quietly, without expression, "I'll close this out as no violation found. Complainant advised of property boundaries." Ray told him that sounded right. Carl said, "You need anything else while I'm here, Chief?" Ray looked at the trench. He looked at the 80 feet of driveway still waiting for the drain installation. He told Carl he had about 4 more hours of work, and then he was going to need a sandwich. Carl smiled, the brief, controlled smile of a deputy who allowed himself exactly that much. He put his notebook away. He said, "Copy that, Chief. Good luck with the drain." He walked back to his unit. Ray heard him key the radio, the contact tone, the call number, the disposition code. No violation found. Complainant advised. Ray pulled his gloves on. He climbed back into the trench. Carl Tatum did not leave when Donna Marsh walked back to her car. Ray had expected him to. The call was closed, the finding logged, the contact at its natural end. But Carl had paused at the rear of his patrol unit, with his hand on the door, and then, instead of opening it, had walked around to the driver's side and gotten in. And Ray had heard the in-car system come to life. The mobile data terminal, the MDT mounted to the center console, the system Ray had overseen the department-wide upgrade of in 2018, connecting to the county GIS database. Ray understood what Carl was doing. He went back to the trench. The Hale County GIS system was a publicly accessible database. Parcel boundaries, deed references, zoning classifications, road center lines, all of it layered on a county-wide aerial base map and updated quarterly from the county assessors and engineers' offices. Ray had used it from the command side for years. Property disputes, easement questions, boundary calls that required an accurate map before a deputy could give a complainant a factual answer. The system had a mobile interface that pushed to the in-car MDTs, simplified, print-capable, the boundary layers selectable from the unit. Carl pulled up parcel 04-2013-0017 first. Ray's 4 acres rendered on the screen in the standard parcel highlight, the boundary outline in blue, the parcel dimensions displayed in the data panel on the right side of the screen. The parcel shape was irregular at the northeast corner, where the property followed the creek drainage, but the western and southern boundaries were clean, straight lines, running parallel to Caldwell Road and the county right-of-way. He toggled the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision layer on top of it. The subdivision boundary appeared in red. The recorded plat line, the legal edge of the 180-lot footprint, as filed with the county in November 2017. The system rendered the 2 boundaries simultaneously. Ray's parcel in blue, the subdivision in red, the gap between them visible and measurable on the screen. At the closest point, the point where the Pinecrest Ridge boundary approached Ray's driveway, the gap was 14 feet. 14 feet of Ray's own property, lying between his driveway's eastern edge and the nearest point of the Pinecrest Ridge recorded plat. The truck and trailer were parked at the 60-foot station on Ray's driveway. On the GIS map, the truck's position was 74 feet from the subdivision boundary at minimum, 60 feet of driveway west from the boundary's closest approach point, plus the 14-foot buffer. Carl selected the print function. The in-car printer ran for 12 seconds and produced a single-page map, the 2 boundary layers rendered in black and white, the parcel numbers labeled, the scale bar at the bottom showing the distance relationships that the screen had displayed. He folded it once and got out of the unit. Donna Marsh was still on the shoulder. She had not driven away. She was standing at the front of her car with her phone in her hand and her clipboard on the hood. The clipboard set down now, not held, the physical instrument of her HOA authority resting on the car hood while she looked at it. Carl walked to her. He unfolded the map and held it out. She took it with both hands. Carl placed the tip of his pen on the red boundary line, the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision edge, the legal limit of the Covenant community's recorded footprint. He said, "This is the subdivision boundary." He moved the pen left along the map, west, toward Ray's driveway, covering the 14-foot gap. He stopped the pen at the driveway line. He said, "This is Mr. Dunbar's driveway." He moved the pen further west, 60 map feet, to the truck's position. He said, "This is the truck." He did not say anything after that. He capped the pen and held it at his side and waited. Donna looked at the map. She looked at the subdivision boundary and read. She looked at the gap between the boundary and the driveway. She looked at the distance between the driveway and the truck. She was a person who had been operating on a set of assumptions about where her authority ended, and the map in her hands was showing her, in the county's own cartography, exactly where that line was, and that the truck was not on the other side of it. She looked up at Carl. She looked over at Ray, who was standing beside the trench with his arms crossed, watching without expression. She looked back at the map. Carl told her she could keep it. Ray had retrieved the Covenant documents from his truck cab while Carl was running the GIS query. He had pulled them from the county recorder's online database the previous evening, the evening after Donna's second visit to his door, the one about the cones in August having been her first, this one about the truck's anticipated presence the following morning. He had not been surprised to hear the knock. He had been in the kitchen when her car pulled onto the shoulder, had watched her walk to the door through the window over the sink, had dried his hands and answered it, and listened while she explained that she was concerned about the truck and trailer being parked in a visible location the next day during his drainage work. He had told her, at the door, the same things he told her in the driveway the following morning. Permitted work, private property, no Covenant authority over his parcel. After she left, he had sat down at the kitchen table with his laptop and pulled the Pinecrest Ridge covenants from the county recorder's database. The full document, 34 pages, recorded November 14, 2017. He had gone to the applicability clause on page 3, the same clause he had read when the document was first recorded 4 years ago. He had read it again. These covenants and restrictions apply to all parcels within the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision, as recorded in Hale County Plat Book 22, pages 14 through 19. He had pulled up Plat Book 22 on the same database and confirmed what he already knew. His parcel number did not appear anywhere in those 6 pages. He had printed the covenant document, highlighted the recording date on the cover page, November 14, 2017, and highlighted the applicability clause on page 3. He had printed his deed, Book 44, page 12, recording date March 15, 2013, and placed both documents in the folder with the drainage permit. He had put the folder on the truck's tailgate the following morning, before he started the work. He brought the folder to where Carl and Donna were standing now. He set the covenant document on the car hood next to Donna's clipboard. He pointed to the highlighted recording date, November 14, 2017. He set his deed next to it. He pointed to the highlighted recording date, March 15, 2013. He did not speak. He let the dates sit side by side on the car hood in the October light. Donna looked at the 2 dates. 4 years and 8 months separated them. Ray's deed was older than the HOA's founding document by 4 years and 8 months. His ownership of this land predated the covenant's existence by the same margin it predated the subdivision's platting, because they were the same event, the plat and the covenant recorded in the same month by the same developer who had bought the timber parcel and built 180 homes on it without ever checking whether the corner lot to the southwest was inside his boundary or outside it. Ray tapped the applicability clause, the highlighted paragraph, the sentence that named Plat Book 22 as the covenant's geographic limit. He told her to find his parcel number in that clause. She read the clause. She read it again. She did not find his parcel number. It was not there to find. Donna set the covenant document down on the hood. She told Ray the truck was still affecting the aesthetic of the neighborhood entrance. She said it without the force of the earlier declarations, said it the way a person states a position they know is not actionable, but have not yet found a way to release. The aesthetics of the neighborhood entrance, the visual impact, the community standard. Ray told her his property was not required to serve as an aesthetic buffer for her subdivision. He said it without heat, the same factual register he had used since she first appeared at the end of his driveway. His property had no aesthetic obligation to the subdivision, no obligation of any kind. It was his land, it predated the community that had grown up around it, and nothing in the recorded documents created any requirement for him to maintain it in a condition that served Pinecrest Ridge's visual preferences. Donna asked whether there was any HOA process, any mechanism, any procedure through which she could require him to maintain his property in a certain condition. Carl answered before Ray did. He told her, not through the HOA. The HOA's authority ran to the boundary of the recorded plat and no further. For the HOA to have any authority over Ray's parcel, there would need to be a separate recorded instrument, an agreement, a covenant annexation, an easement, that Ray had voluntarily signed and that had been recorded in the county deed index with his parcel number in the legal description. That instrument would need Ray's signature. It would need to have been executed and recorded to be enforceable. Without it, the HOA had no mechanism, procedural, legal, or otherwise, that reached Ray's property. Carl looked at Ray. Ray told her he had signed no such instrument. He told her she was welcome to search the deed index under his parcel number and confirm that for herself. She would find the 2013 deed, the 2014 driveway access permit, and the 2023 drainage permit. She would not find anything connecting his parcel to the Pinecrest Ridge HOA because nothing connecting his parcel to the Pinecrest Ridge HOA existed. Donna looked at the covenant document on the hood. She looked at the GIS map Carl had printed. She picked up her clipboard without writing anything on it. Then she stepped away from the car. She walked to the far end of the shoulder, 30 feet east, toward the Pinecrest Ridge entrance, putting distance between herself and the conversation. Ray watched her dial. Carl watched with the peripheral attention of an officer who was technically still on scene and had no reason to leave yet. They could hear one side of the call from where they stood. Her opening. She was calling about a property matter and needed a quick answer. A pause while she explained the situation. They could hear the compressed account, the neighboring parcel, the driveway, the covenants. A longer pause. Then a question, formed carefully, the way people formed questions when they were beginning to suspect the answer. Does the covenant cover properties that predate the recording date? A pause. Another question. Even if the property is adjacent to the subdivision boundary? A longer pause. She was not speaking during this one. She was listening. One more question, shorter. Is there any mechanism at all? The longest pause. She said thank you and ended the call. She stood at the far end of the shoulder for a moment with her phone in her hand. Then she walked back. She stopped in front of Ray. The clipboard was at her side. The GIS map was folded in her other hand. Behind her, the Pinecrest Ridge entrance sign was visible. The brick columns, the iron letters, the landscaping the HOA maintained with the dues it collected from 180 households that were inside the covenant boundary and had signed the instruments that bound them to it. She told Ray she may have acted on incorrect information. She said it without qualification, without appending a but or a however, or a to be fair. She said it in the flat, declarative way of someone who had just had a position they believed in removed from under them by a county GIS map, a highlighted recording date, and a 90-second phone call with a lawyer. Ray looked at her. He thought about the call she had made to dispatch at 9:02 a.m., the vehicle obstructing road access, the uncooperative driver, the safety hazard that had not been a safety hazard. He thought about the word uncooperative and what it had meant in her description and what it had actually corresponded to on this driveway. A property owner who had shown her his permit, cited the recording dates, and gone back to work. He told her he appreciated that. He said it the same way he said everything, level, unhurried, without irony. He appreciated it because it was accurate, and because it had been said without being extracted, and those two things together were more than he had expected when Donna Marsh's car had stopped on his shoulder at 8:47 a.m. Carl Tatum was writing the final notes in his field notebook. The call would close as no violation found, complainant advised of property boundaries, GIS map provided, permit documentation reviewed and confirmed. He would log the body camera footage to the department's evidence management system when he returned to the office, the standard retention period applying. The recording would exist for 36 months in the department's archive. The department Ray Dunbar had built, running on the systems Ray Dunbar had chosen, preserving the record of a Tuesday morning on Caldwell Road, when a woman called 911 about a truck in a driveway, and the facts said what the facts said. Ray picked up the covenant document and the deed from the car hood. He put them back in the folder. He put the folder on his tailgate. He told Donna she was welcome to have a copy of the GIS map if she needed a second one. He had his own printed from the same database at home. She said she had the one Carl had given her. Ray nodded. He said, "Then I think we're done here." Carl Tatum closed out the call at 10:22 a.m. He had stayed longer than the call required, not at Ray's request, not at Donna's, but because a sound deputy stays on scene until the situation has reached a stable condition and the parties involved have separated without incident. He had watched Donna's phone call from the far end of the shoulder. He had watched her walk back. He had heard Ray's response. He had given the situation 2 minutes after that exchange to confirm it was finished before he closed his notebook and walked to Ray. He shook Ray's hand. He told him the call was closed. No violation found, no action taken. Complainant advised of property boundaries. He said it as a formal statement, the way an officer states a disposition to a subject of a complaint. So the record of what happened is spoken aloud and acknowledged, not just written in a notebook. Ray thanked him. He told Carl he had done good work this morning. Carl told him it was not complicated work, sir. He said it without self-deprecation, said it as a factual assessment, the way Ray had taught the department to assess things, accurately, without inflating or diminishing. The call had not been complicated. The documents had said what they said. The map had shown what it showed. Carl had read both and reported the finding. Carl nodded at Donna Marsh, a professional acknowledgement, neither warm nor cold, the nod of a deputy concluding a contact with a complainant whose complaint had not been sustained. Then he walked to his unit, pulled onto Caldwell Road, and headed north. He did not turn toward Pinecrest Ridge. He had 2 other calls in the queue and a county to cover. Donna's car was still on the shoulder. Ray had expected her to leave when Carl left, the deputy's departure removing the last official element of the morning's event, the logical endpoint of a situation that had run its course. But her car was still there, parked behind the space where Carl's unit had been, and Donna was standing beside it with her phone in one hand and the folded GIS map in the other, and the clipboard on the car hood where she had set it during the phone call and not picked back up. Ray was at the 80-foot station on the trench line, tamping the filter fabric against the trench sidewall ahead of the aggregate placement. He was aware of her on the shoulder, the way he had been aware of her since 8:47 a.m., without turning toward it, without giving it more attention than the work required. He tamped the fabric. He noted the station. He moved to 85 feet. At 10:31 a.m., he heard her footsteps on the gravel, not on the shoulder, on the driveway. She had crossed the property line again. He set the tamping rod against the trench wall and straightened and waited. She walked up the driveway without the clipboard. She had left it on the car hood, the organizational instrument of her HOA authority, sitting on the hood of her car on Caldwell Road, while she walked onto his property without it. He noted the absence. In 34 years of reading people, he had learned to read what they put down as carefully as what they carried. She stopped at a reasonable distance. She asked him why he had not just said who he was when she first came over. Ray looked at her for a moment before he answered. He told her he had not thought his identity was relevant to whether a truck was allowed to sit in its owner's driveway. He said it simply, not as a rebuke, not as a point scored, as a statement of his actual reasoning. He was on his own property, doing permitted work. The question of who he was had not seemed to bear on the question of whether the truck had to move. The truck did not have to move because it was on his property, and he was doing permitted work. And that would have been true whether he was Ray Dunbar, retired chief of the Hale County Sheriff's Office, or any other Hale County resident who owned this parcel and held this permit. Donna said she would have handled it differently if she had known. Ray looked at her. He told her that was the part that concerned him. He said it quietly, not aggressively, not pointedly, but he let it sit, the words out in the October air between them, the full weight of what they meant available to anyone who wanted to pick it up. He had handled 34 years of property disputes, neighbor complaints, HOA enforcement escalations that found their way to his deputies. He had seen the category more times than he could count. The person who behaved one way towards someone they believed had no recourse, and would have behaved differently towards someone they knew did. The thing that concerned him was not that Donna had come to his driveway. It was that her conduct on his driveway, the directness of the demand, the 911 call, the description she had given dispatch, had been calibrated to a man she believed had no particular standing. She had said she would have handled it differently if she had known. He believed her. That was exactly the concern. He had bought the Caldwell Road property in 2013 for a specific reason, and the reason was not acreage or price or the view from the back of the lot, though all three had been factors. The reason was that it was outside a subdivision. He had been in law enforcement for 22 years at the point of purchase. He had spent those 22 years running calls across Hale County, including, increasingly as the county developed, calls that originated inside covenant communities. HOA enforcement actions that became neighbor disputes that became shouting matches that became calls to dispatch, that became deputy responses, that became, in the worst cases, charges filed and court dates scheduled over questions about fence heights and lawn conditions, and vehicles parked 73 hours past the covenant's 72-hour limit. He understood the architecture of covenant communities from the inside, not as a resident, but as the officer who received the calls that the architecture generated. He understood what happened when enforcement authority was held by people who were neighbors of the people they were enforcing against. When the community standard was whatever the current board believed it was. When the line between legitimate governance and personal grievance was drawn by whoever happened to be president at the time. He had wanted land outside that architecture. He had looked for parcels that predated subdivision development, that sat at the edge of what was coming rather than inside it, that gave him the legal clarity of ownership without the overlay of covenant governance. The Caldwell Road lot had been exactly that, a corner parcel with a clear deed, no encumbrances, no HOA affiliation, no covenant in the county index that touched it. He had bought it and built on it and watched Pinecrest Ridge go up around him and read the covenants when they were recorded and confirmed what he already knew. He was not in them. He had never been in them. The architecture had grown up to his property line and stopped there, exactly as the recorded documents required it to. He had drawn his own setbacks from the property boundaries, larger than the county minimum, because he wanted the distances he wanted. He had filed his own permits, the driveway, the garage, now the drain, because he wanted the documentation to exist and to be current and to say exactly what the work was and where it was and who had authorized it. He had built the garage over 3 summers because he had wanted to build it himself, because the work was satisfying, and because a man who builds something himself knows exactly what is in it. He had never needed the HOA. He had never wanted it. He had simply needed it to stay on its side of the line. He set the tamping rod against the truck and walked to the outdoor spigot on the garage wall, a cold water bib he had installed in the garage's first summer, the most used fixture on the property after the kitchen sink. He ran the water over his hands, the October cold immediate and clean. He dried them on the shop towel hanging from the spigot handle. Then he turned to Donna Marsh and told her about the 911 call. He did not raise his voice. He did not move toward her. He stood at the garage wall with the shop towel in his hands and spoke at the same register he had used for the entire morning. He told her the call she made to dispatch at 9:02 a.m. described a vehicle obstructing road access on Caldwell Road near the Pinecrest Ridge entrance. His truck had not been obstructing road access. Caldwell Road had been fully passable in both directions from the moment the truck was parked at 7:40 a.m. until the moment Carl Tatum arrived and documented it. Carl had looked at the road in both directions and photographed it with his body camera. The road was clear. The truck was 15 feet from the road edge on private property. The call's description of road obstruction did not correspond to the physical conditions that existed on Caldwell Road that morning. She had described the driver as uncooperative. He had answered every question she asked. He had shown her the permit when she arrived, before she demanded it, before Carl arrived, before any formal process required him to produce it. He had cited the deed recording date. He had told her exactly where to find the documents that supported his position. He had not raised his voice. He had not threatened her. He had not done anything that a reasonable person would characterize as uncooperative. He had declined to move a truck from his own driveway, which was a different category entirely. He told her those were not accurate descriptions. He paused. He told her that filing a false report with emergency dispatch carried consequences under Hale County statute. He did not say the word misdemeanor. He did not need to. The sentence was complete without it, its meaning available to anyone who had spent enough time in this county to know what filing a false report with dispatch meant legally, and its weight available to anyone standing in front of a man who had spent 34 years in law enforcement in this county, and whose department had received the call and logged it and recorded it, and whose deputy had body camera footage of what the conditions on Caldwell Road actually were on the morning in question. She called his department. She was standing in front of the man who had run it. Donna Marsh went very still. Ray waited. He gave her the space to understand the full dimensions of what he had just said, not to frighten her, not to leverage her, but because he had learned in 34 years that the most productive conversations happened when both parties had the same information. She had come to his driveway with a set of assumptions. The morning had removed those assumptions one at a time. This was the last one. She stood still for long enough that the October wind moved through the sweet gum at the back of the property, and the leaves at the top of the ridge turned in it and settled again. Then he told her what he was asking. He was not filing a complaint. He said it first because it was the most important thing, and because her stillness suggested she was preparing for a different conversation than the one he was about to have. He was not asking for an apology. He was not going to the department with this morning, or with August's conversation about the cones, or with the September drive-by on Caldwell Road, when she had slowed to look at his property from her car window. He was asking her to read the plat boundary before the next time she decided what her HOA's jurisdiction covered. He was asking her to confirm, in writing, if she wanted to do this correctly, and he thought she should want to do it correctly, that the Pinecrest Ridge Homeowners Association held no covenant authority, no aesthetic authority, and no access authority over parcel 04-2013-0017, as recorded in Hale County Deed Book 44, page 12. He had a form for that. His attorney, Patricia Gaines, Hale County Property Law, 28 years in practice, had drafted it 2 months ago, the week after Donna's first visit about the orange cones in August. Patricia had drafted it in 2 hours and billed Ray for 1. It was a single page. It said what the recorded documents already said. It required the HOA president's signature and 2 board members as witnesses, and it would be recorded in the county deed index with Ray's parcel number in the legal description. It was not a lawsuit. It was not a threat. It was a piece of paper that made permanent and searchable what the county's own records had always shown. He told her to take whatever time she needed. He told her his attorney's contact information was on the form, and that Patricia was available if the board had questions. He told her the form had been sitting in his property file for 2 months and would continue to sit there as long as necessary. Then he picked up the tamping rod. He told Donna Marsh he had 60 feet of French drain left to install, and the light was only going to hold until about 5 o'clock. Patricia Gaines had drafted the boundary acknowledgement form on a Thursday afternoon in August, 2 days after Donna Marsh's first visit to Ray's door about the orange cones at the trench head, the visit Ray had recounted to Patricia in a 15-minute phone call the following morning. Patricia had been practicing property law in Hale County for 28 years. She had handled deed disputes, easement conflicts, plat boundary questions, covenant annexation challenges, the full range of disputes that arose when land changed hands and communities formed around it, and the recorded documents did not say what one party believed they said. She had seen the category Donna Marsh represented many times, the HOA officer who had internalized the community's covenant as a general grant of authority over everything visible from the community's entrance, rather than the specific recorded instrument it actually was, binding only the parcels whose owners had signed into it. She had told Ray on the phone that the situation was straightforward from a legal standpoint. His parcel was not in the plat. His deed predated the covenant. The HOA had no authority over his property, and never had. The question was not whether that was true, it was, but whether having it documented in a recorded instrument would prevent further visits, further demands, further calls to dispatch about trucks in driveways. Ray had told her he thought it would help. She had drafted the form in 2 hours. She had billed him for one. The document was a single page. It was titled Boundary Acknowledgement and Covenant Non-Applicability Statement, Parcel 04-2013-0017. The operative language was 3 paragraphs. The first established the parties: the Pinecrest Ridge Homeowners Association, a North Carolina nonprofit corporation, and Raymond E. Dunbar, owner of record of Parcel 04-2013-0017, as recorded in Hale County Deed Book 44, page 12. The second paragraph was the acknowledgement itself. The association hereby acknowledges and confirms that it holds no covenant authority, no aesthetic or maintenance authority, and no access or use authority of any kind over Parcel 04-2013-0017, that the parcel is not within the Pinecrest Ridge recorded plat boundary, as filed in Hale County Plat Book 22, pages 14 through 19, and that no instrument recorded in the Hale County Deed Index creates any obligation, restriction, or authority binding said parcel to the association's governance. The third paragraph stated that the acknowledgement was made voluntarily, without duress, and was intended to be recorded in the Hale County Deed Index as a permanent title instrument. Below the text, a signature line for the HOA president, a date line, and 2 witness signature lines for board members. A notary block at the bottom. Patricia had attached a cover letter explaining the document's purpose and a copy of the relevant plat pages and covenant applicability clause for the board's reference. She had kept the tone of the cover letter factual and neutral. This is what the documents show. This is what the form memorializes. Here is the contact information if you have questions. Ray had kept the form in the Caldwell Road property folder for 2 months. He had brought it out of the house on the Tuesday morning of the drainage work, not because he had planned to present it that day, but because the folder held all the active property documents, and the folder was on the tailgate, and he had, by mid-morning, found the occasion to use it. He gave it to Donna Marsh at 10:44 a.m., standing beside the trench at the 80-foot station, with the tamping rod leaning against the truck, and the October light at the angle that meant the morning was giving way to midday. He had gone inside, retrieved the form from the folder, and brought it back out. He held it out to her without preface. The document spoke for itself, and Patricia's cover letter explained everything that needed explaining. Donna took it with both hands. She read the title. She read the first paragraph. She read the acknowledgement language in the second paragraph, the specific enumeration of the authorities the HOA did not hold over his parcel, the reference to the plat book and page numbers. She read the third paragraph. She looked up at Ray. He told her his attorney's contact information was on the cover letter. He told her Patricia was available if the board had questions about the document or wanted to discuss the language. He told her there was no deadline. The form had been waiting 2 months and would continue to wait. He told her he was not asking for an answer today. Donna folded the document carefully, not the way a person folded something they were going to throw away, but the way a person folded something they intended to put somewhere specific and retrieve later. She put it in the pocket of her HOA polo shirt. She told Ray she would bring it to the board. Ray picked up the tamping rod. She walked back to her car. He heard the door close. He heard the engine start. He heard her pull onto Caldwell Road and head east toward the Pinecrest Ridge entrance. He went back into the trench. The board meeting was Wednesday evening, 3 days after the Tuesday of the drainage work, and the 911 call, and Carl Tatum and the GIS map, and everything else the morning had contained. The Pinecrest Ridge HOA board met in the community clubhouse, a single-story building at the center of the subdivision, the common area maintained with the association dues, the meeting room at the back furnished with a long table and 8 chairs, and a projector screen the board used for the annual budget presentation. The room smelled of commercial carpet and the cleaning product the maintenance crew used on the tile in the entry. A whiteboard on the north wall still had agenda items from the previous month's meeting in dry erase marker, partially erased. 4 board members were present at 6:30 p.m. Donna Marsh, president, at the head of the table. Greg Holt, vice president, to her left. Greg had worked in commercial real estate for 19 years, the kind of work that required reading recorded instruments and plat maps as a professional routine rather than an occasional exercise. Sandra Lewin, treasurer, across from Greg. Phil Carey, at-large member, at the far end. Ray was not there. Patricia Gaines was not there. The meeting was a board executive session. No residents present, no public notice required for the agenda item they were there to discuss. Donna had distributed copies of the boundary acknowledgement form before the meeting, along with the GIS map Carl had printed and the relevant pages from the Pinecrest Ridge Covenant that Patricia's cover letter had referenced. She had also included a printout of Ray's deed recording date and the covenant recording date side by side, which she had pulled from the county recorder's database herself on Tuesday afternoon. Greg Holt read the covenant applicability clause first. He read it the way someone read a commercial lease provision, carefully, without the assumption that he already knew what it said, looking for the operative language and reading it in the context of the document's structure. He read the plat book reference. He looked at the GIS map. He found the Pinecrest Ridge plat boundary on the map and traced it with his finger. He found Ray's parcel boundary. He found the 14-foot gap. He set the covenant down on the table. He said, "He's right. He's not in this." He said it without hedging, without a qualifier, without the tentative framing of someone uncertain of their reading. He said it as a finding, the same way he announced findings in his professional work, when the document said what it said, and the map showed what it showed, and the conclusion was not available for negotiation. Sandra Lewin asked Greg whether he was certain. Greg told her to read the applicability clause and find parcel 04-2013-0017 in it. Sandra read it. She looked at the plat book page numbers in the clause. She looked at Ray's parcel number on the GIS map, clearly outside the red boundary line. She set the covenant down. Phil Carey had not spoken yet. He was reading Patricia Gaines's cover letter, the whole thing, methodically, the way Phil read everything. Phil was a retired civil engineer. He approached documents the way he had approached construction specifications for 35 years, from the beginning, in order, without skipping to the conclusion. He finished the cover letter. He looked at the form. He looked at the signature block. He said they should sign the form. Sandra Lewin asked the question that had been in the room since the meeting started. She asked whether the 911 call created any liability for the HOA. The room was quiet for a moment. Donna told her the call had been made in her personal capacity, that she had called as a resident with a concern, not as HOA president acting in an official capacity. Sandra asked whether that was how Ray's attorney would see it. Donna did not answer immediately. Greg Holt was looking at the table. Phil Carey was looking at the boundary acknowledgement form. The question sat in the meeting room with the particular weight of a question that everyone present understood, but that no one had wanted to be the first to raise. Sandra asked it again, not more forcefully, but more specifically. She asked whether Patricia Gaines, when she reviewed the morning's events in preparation for any further action, would accept the characterization that a 911 call, made while wearing a Pinecrest Ridge HOA polo shirt, while holding a Pinecrest Ridge HOA clipboard, while identifying herself as the HOA president to the responding deputy, had been made in a purely personal capacity, unconnected to the HOA. Greg said quietly that he thought they should sign the form. Phil said he had already said that. Donna looked at the acknowledgement document in front of her. She looked at the signature line with her name printed below it. She looked at the witness lines. She said, "All in favor." The vote was 4-0. Donna signed first. The president's signature line, the date line, the title line reading President, Pinecrest Ridge Homeowners Association. Her handwriting was controlled and legible, the signature of someone who had signed official documents before and knew how an official signature looked. Greg Holt signed as first witness. Sandra Lewin signed as second witness. Phil Carey noted for the record that the vote had been unanimous and that the board's action was consistent with the recorded plat documents and the covenant's applicability clause as written. The notary was Sandra's husband, a licensed North Carolina notary who had notarized HOA documents before and who came to the clubhouse at 7:15 p.m. for the purpose. He verified the identities, administered the affirmation, affixed the seal. The document was complete. Donna sealed it in a certified mail envelope that same evening. She addressed it to Patricia Gaines at her office on the county seat's main road. She dropped it at the post office on her way home. The envelope arrived at Patricia's office on Friday morning. Her assistant brought it in with the morning mail, the certified mail slip on top, the return address, the Pinecrest Ridge HOA's community clubhouse. Patricia signed for it, opened it at her desk, and read the document in the 45 seconds it took to read a single-page instrument she had drafted herself. The signature block was complete. Donna Marsh, President, signed and dated. Greg Holt, witness, signed. Sandra Lewin, witness, signed. Notary seal affixed. Commission number visible. Expiration date current. She called Ray at 9:07 a.m. Ray was in the drainage trench at the 110-foot station. The French drain now passed its midpoint, the pipe laid and covered with aggregate for the first 95 feet, the filter fabric folded over the top of the stone, and the trench ready for backfill from the 20-foot mark east. The October weather was holding, cool and clear, the light flat and even, the kind of fall working day that made outdoor projects feel manageable. He had been in the trench since 7:30 a.m. His phone was on the truck tailgate in his work jacket's breast pocket. He heard it from the trench. He climbed out, pulled the jacket on, answered. Patricia told him the document had arrived. She read him the signature block, the names, the titles, the date. She told him the notary seal was current and the execution was clean. Ray was standing at the edge of the trench with the October sun on his back and the drainage pipe visible in the cut below him, and the permit flags at the far end of the work zone catching the light. He looked at the 50 feet of trench still remaining between where he stood and the garage wall. He thanked her. He asked her to record it. Patricia said she would have it to the recorder's office by end of business that day. It would be in the index by Tuesday at the latest. The standard processing time for a one-page instrument with a clean execution. Ray thanked her again. He told her to send the bill to the Caldwell Road address. He ended the call. He set the phone back in his jacket pocket. He looked at the trench. He looked at the 50 feet remaining. He picked up the tamping rod and climbed back in. The document was recorded in the Hale County Deed Index the following Tuesday. Book 58, page 31. The legal description in the instrument's heading referenced parcel 04-2013-0017. Anyone searching the index under that parcel number would find it. Any title company running a search on the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision would find it. Any future HOA board. Any attorney advising a future resident. Any person who pulled the deed index for this corner of Hale County and looked at what the recorded instrument said about the relationship between the Pinecrest Ridge HOA and the 4-acre parcel on Caldwell Road. They would find Book 58, page 31. It said what it said. It would say it for as long as the Hale County records existed. The French drain was finished on the last Friday of October. Ray had laid the final section of pipe on a Wednesday, backfilled the trench on Thursday, and raked the surface gravel back into place on Friday morning. A 4-hour job that required a steel rake, a wheelbarrow, and the kind of patience that came from doing physical work long enough to stop fighting it and let it take the time it took. The driveway surface looked the same as it had before the work began, which was the point. The drain was invisible. It was 140 feet of perforated pipe wrapped in filter fabric, bedded in clean aggregate, buried 14 inches below the gravel surface, doing its work in the dark, the way properly installed drainage always did, quietly, continuously, without requiring attention. The county inspector had come on the 27th of October. His name was Dennis Pratt. Ray had dealt with Dennis in a professional capacity twice over the years, both times property-adjacent matters that had required the county engineer's office and the sheriff's department to coordinate. Dennis had walked the installation from the outlet at the east end to the inlet structure at the west, checked the pipe grade with his level, checked the outlet protection at the discharge point, reviewed the as-built measurements against the permitted plan. He had written one note in his field book and signed the permit card. The note read, "Installation consistent with approved plan. No corrections required." Ray had filed the closed permit with the county engineer's office and put his copy in the Caldwell Road property folder, alongside the original permit, the approved drainage plan, the deed, and the certified copy of Book 58, page 31, that Patricia Gaines had sent him after recording. The orange cones were in the garage. The equipment trailer had been returned to the rental yard the day after the inspector's visit. The truck was in the driveway where it belonged, parked at the same angle, in the same position, on the same 4 acres it had been parked on since Ray moved permanently to Caldwell Road. The driveway was his. The permit was closed. The drain was in the ground. The work was done. Book 58, page 31. The boundary acknowledgement had been in the Hale County Deed Index since the second Tuesday of October. recorded 4 business days after Patricia received the signed original, processed in the standard queue, assigned its book and page, indexed under parcel 04-2013-0017, and cross-referenced to the Pinecrest Ridge HOA's corporate filing number in the County Register of Deeds. The recording stamp on the original document showed the date, the time, 2:14 p.m., and the deputy register's initials. It was not a dramatic document. It was 280 words and 1 signature block and a notary seal. It did not describe a dispute. It did not reference a 911 call or a Tuesday morning in October, or an orange cone or a tamping rod, or a woman in a navy polo shirt standing at the end of a driveway with a clipboard. It contained none of that. It contained only what it needed to contain: the parties, the parcel number, the acknowledgement, the date, the signatures. But it was permanent. That was the thing about recorded instruments. They did not expire, did not fade, did not depend on anyone's memory of what had happened, or anyone's willingness to tell the story accurately. They sat in the index, cross-referenced and searchable, available to anyone with a county recorder's account and a parcel number. The deed index was not a dramatic place. It was a repository of facts, arranged in the order they had been established. And Book 58, page 31, was now one of those facts. Any title company running a search on the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision in connection with a sale would find it. Any attorney advising a buyer on Lot 114, or Lot 32, or any of the other 180 lots in the plat, would find it in the course of a standard title examination. Any future HOA board, the board 5 years from now, the board 10 years from now, the board after Donna Marsh and Greg Holt and Sandra Lewin and Phil Carey had all rotated off, would find it if they looked. Any person who wanted to know what the recorded instruments said about the relationship between the Pinecrest Ridge Homeowners Association and the 4-acre parcel on Caldwell Road would find one page in Book 58 that answered the question completely and permanently. It said what it said. It would say it for as long as the county kept records, which in Hale County's case meant since 1847, and showed no signs of stopping. Donna Marsh did not resign. Ray had not expected her to. Resignation would have required the kind of dramatic rupture that the situation had not produced. There had been no public confrontation, no community scandal, no residents gathered on a lawn watching something collapse. There had been a Tuesday morning on Caldwell Road, and a board meeting on a Wednesday evening, and a certified mail envelope, and a notary seal. The visible surface of the Pinecrest Ridge HOA had not changed. The board still met. The covenants were still enforced. The community newsletter still went out on the 1st of the month, with the parking reminder, and the landscaping schedule, and the minutes from the previous meeting. What had changed was a single behavior. Donna Marsh no longer walked the Caldwell Road shoulder with a clipboard. She no longer slowed her car at Ray's driveway on her way in or out of the subdivision. She no longer knocked on his door about cones or trucks or drainage equipment or anything else visible from the Pinecrest Ridge entrance road. The HOA ran the same way it had always run, and Ray's 4 acres remained exactly what they had always been: outside it, adjacent to it, unbothered by it. And the two conditions coexisted without friction, because a single page in the deed index had made the boundary unambiguous in a way that a conversation, even an accurate one, never fully could. Ray understood the value of written instruments. He had spent 34 years in a profession that ran on documentation, incident reports, warrants, evidence logs, chain of custody forms, the paper record that made the difference between a finding that held and a finding that didn't. He had told deputies throughout his career that the best field work in the world was only as durable as the documentation that supported it. The document was what remained when memory faded and personnel changed, and the people who had been present for an event moved on, or retired, or died. Book 58, page 31 would remain. Carl Tatum had seen Ray at the gas station on the county road 2 weeks after the Tuesday of the drainage work. It was a Thursday morning, Carl coming off a night shift, Ray heading into town for hardware store supplies. They had talked for 10 minutes at the pumps, in the way that people talked in small counties where professional relationships ran long, and the same people encountered each other across years of different contexts. Carl told him the call had been a subject of conversation at the department. Not formally, not a review, not a briefing, not anything that had generated paperwork or been entered into the department's administrative record. Just the way things got talked about in a department of 61 sworn officers who worked together across shifts and shared the specific institutional knowledge of their county. The knowledge that Ray Dunbar lived on Caldwell Road. The knowledge that his property sat at the corner of the Pinecrest Ridge subdivision. The knowledge that a 911 complaint had been called in about a truck in a driveway, and that the unit assigned to the call had been Carl Tatum, and that the property in question had turned out to be the retired chief's 4 acres, and that the truck had been exactly where it was supposed to be on permitted private property. Carl said the deputies who had worked under Ray found it funny. He said it with the careful neutrality of someone reporting a fact without endorsing the sentiment, which was itself a form of endorsement. The deputies who had worked under Ray had been amused. That was the word Carl used. Amused. Not contemptuous, not outraged. Amused, in the way that people were amused by situations whose outcome was obvious in retrospect, and whose irony required no elaboration. Carl said Lieutenant Barrow did not find it funny at all. He said it the way he said things that were true and that he was not going to expand on. Elise Barrow had worked under Ray Dunbar for 6 of her 9 years. She had been promoted to lieutenant by Ray Dunbar. She had, once, stopped her patrol unit on Caldwell Road at 11 p.m. to check on a light in his garage because she was 2 properties north on a different call, and the light was on late, and she was the kind of officer who noticed things. She did not find it funny that someone had called 911 about a truck in Ray Dunbar's driveway. Ray told Carl he appreciated her looking out. Carl said, "She always did, Chief." Ray filled his tank and drove to the hardware store. November arrived the way November arrived in this part of Hale County, without announcement, the October warmth simply gone one morning. The ridge hardwoods passed their color and into the bare branch clarity of the late fall, the light lower and cooler and lasting fewer hours than the week before. Ray adjusted his schedule to the light the way he had always adjusted to it, earlier to the property tasks, earlier to the porch, the coffee made before full dawn, and taken outside in the jacket rather than the flannel shirt. He woke at 6 a.m. He had done so for 34 years, and he did so now. The alarm was a habit that had become biological. He was awake at 5:58 and lying still for 2 minutes before the phone on the nightstand completed the formality. He made the coffee in the kitchen while the sky outside the east-facing window went from black to the deep blue that preceded first light, the ridge line visible as a darker shape against the slightly lighter dark above it. He took the coffee to the porch. The property walk came first. The fence line along the south and east boundaries, the drainage channel at the northeast corner where the creek ran in the wet months, the back of the detached garage where the workshop framing was going up. He did the walk with the coffee in one hand and the quiet attention of a man who had learned to read land over 11 years of ownership, the places where the ground was saturated from the week's rain, the fence post that needed checking, the sweet gum at the back of the lot that had dropped its star-shaped leaves across the drainage channel and would need to be cleared before the first hard rain. He noted what needed doing. He did not write it down. After 11 years on this property, the inventory lived in his head the way the county's roads had lived in his head during 3 decades of patrol work, present, accessible, updated automatically by each morning's walk. The Pinecrest Ridge rooftops were visible from the porch. He could see them above the fence line and the vegetation at the property's eastern boundary, the roof lines of the nearest homes, the subdivision's interior road visible in the gap between 2 lots at the corner, the community entrance sign at the road junction 80 feet east. Pinecrest Ridge, a covenant community. The brick columns, the landscaping the HOA maintained with the dues collected from 180 households, the iron letters that announced the community's character to anyone turning off Caldwell Road. 180 homes. Families who had bought into this community and signed the covenants and paid the dues and lived by the standards the board maintained. People who wanted the fence heights consistent and the lawns kept, and the vehicles off the street past 72 hours, and the community entrance looking the way a community entrance was supposed to look. Ray had nothing against any of it. He had spent 34 years protecting people in communities like this one, had run the calls that arose in them, had resolved the disputes that the covenant architecture generated, had seen the full range of what happened when neighbors governed neighbors with the authority of recorded instruments. He understood what Pinecrest Ridge was. He had simply never been in it. He had served this county for 34 years. He had run his department with the same principle he had tried to live by. Know exactly where the line is, stay on your side of it, and do not take one step past the authority the paper gives you. The covenants gave the Pinecrest Ridge HOA authority over 180 parcels within a recorded plat boundary. They gave it no authority over the 4 acres on the other side of that line. That had always been true. It was true before Donna Marsh arrived in the neighborhood, true before she joined the board, true before she ran for president, true on the morning she stood at the end of his driveway in a navy polo shirt and told him to move his truck. It was true now. It was recorded now. It would remain true and recorded in perpetuity. The truck was in the driveway on a Tuesday in November when the jogger came past. Mid-40s, Pinecrest Ridge by the direction he had come from. Running shoes and athletic gear and earbuds trailing down to a phone clipped at his waist. He was moving at the steady pace of a man who ran this route regularly. Not racing, not warming up. The pace of someone for whom this stretch of Caldwell Road was a known quantity. A portion of a route that had a beginning and an end, and required no particular attention. He slowed when he reached Ray's driveway. He looked at the truck, the full-size work truck sitting in the driveway, where it sat every morning, at the same angle, in the same position it had occupied since Ray parked it there after the drainage work was finished. He looked at Ray on the porch, the coffee mug in hand, the jacket on against the November morning. He took one earbud out. He looked at the truck again. Then he looked at Ray. He nodded. Ray raised the coffee mug. The man put the earbud back in. He resumed his pace. He jogged east along Caldwell Road toward the Pinecrest Ridge entrance and turned into the subdivision and was gone. He did not stop. He did not ask about the truck. He did not take out his phone and call anyone. He had looked at a truck in a driveway on a Tuesday morning in November and nodded at the man sitting on the porch and gone on with his run. That was the entirety of it. Ray finished the coffee. He watched the light settle over the ridge, the November light, low and clean, the bare hardwoods on the ridgeline in full silhouette now, the sky behind them, the pale, clear blue of a cold morning that was going to hold. He listened to the subdivision wake up, the sounds of cars starting, the school bus on the interior road, the particular domestic sounds of 180 households beginning their Tuesday. He took the mug inside. He rinsed it at the kitchen sink. He went to the table where the workshop plans were spread. The framing layout, the electrical rough-in diagram, the materials list he had been refining for 2 weeks. He sat down with a pencil and the measuring tape and the pad of graph paper he used for dimensions. The deed said what it said. Book 44, page 12, recorded March 15th, 2013. 4 acres on Caldwell Road. His name on the instrument. The legal description clear and unambiguous, and 11 years undisturbed. The boundary acknowledgement said what it said. Book 58, page 31, recorded the 2nd Tuesday of October. 280 words, 4 signatures, 1 notary seal. The Pinecrest Ridge HOA's own acknowledgement in its own hand that the line was where it had always been. The truck sat where it had always sat. The driveway had always been his. The deed index now said so in 2 places, and the second place was the HOA's own signature. Ray set the pencil to the graph paper and started the workshop plans.